All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on model search. My name is Nick Exposito. I'm the marketing director here at TriStar, and I'm very pleased to introduce our presenter, Sean Schreckengast, business development manager here at TriStar. Before we get started, I just want to do some quick bookkeeping and mention that a complimentary recording of the webinar will be sent to everyone who registered automatically, and it will also be available on our website and YouTube page right after the presentation. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please just feel free to hold on to those questions, and we'll have a little brief Q&A at the very end. But before I pass it off to Sean, I just want to do a quick bookkeeping and a little TriStar overview. All right. So at TriStar, we specialize in helping manufacturing companies adopt systems and processes to enable better and more efficient product development. We achieve this by being the largest value-added reseller for PTC products and services worldwide, with headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona, and representatives and engineers all throughout North America. We've been in business for over 25 years, and we're experts in CAD, data management, PLM, and product development. We also have a large assortment of custom solutions, services, and support packages tailored to your specific needs. So with that, let me just pass the reins over to Sean.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you, everybody, for joining today for this webinar on model search. A little bit about myself before we get started. Again, my name is Sean Schreckengast. I'm a business development manager with TriStar and also a Creo parametric specialist. I've been with TriStar for over 12 years and previously with PTC for over 16 years, with a 43-year background in mechanical engineering, and I've been using various CAD products for over 40 years, and 30 years of that specializing in PTC products, and 25 years using Creo parametric. So I've kind of been around a little bit here. I live in a very small town in Colorado named Florissant, and the reason I say that is because there's very limited internet out here in this part of the country or this part of the state. And as such, I use SpaceX Starlink for my internet. And the reason I bring that up is sometimes my connection runs a little bit slower than what you might see in a better environment. So things that would happen a little bit faster, maybe for you, goes a little bit slower for me. So some of these things, it might take a few seconds to load as we go through the demonstration. So a little bit about model search. Model search is developed in Europe, in Austria, and by a company called Mate, formerly named TechSoft, but now they go by the name of Mate. And they are the developers of Model Search. And Model Search really is, kind of a PTC partnered tool, but it does work with some other softwares. We'll talk about that in a moment as far as when we look for models within Windchill, but we'll talk about the specifics of that in a moment. But before we get into the details of the software, what's the motivation for using a tool like Model Search? First of all, department standardization is pretty rare. Very few companies have a standardization department in their environment. The engineers, have a very difficult time handling standardization on a day-to-day business. So there's really little standardization in most companies. For engineers, it's difficult to use existing designs when it's difficult to find those designs, right? So this tool really helps us find, similar type models that we may be able to reuse for new parts. When we talk about finite element modeling and analysis, those calculations can, take time and cost a lot of money. And if we can reuse similar parts, then we can do away with those, extra, simulation iterations. Purchasing departments, have a hard time going back and finding, purchase orders for similar parts. So they have very little reuse in some of that data. And, the production environment, typically creates new process plans when they have a new part rather than trying to use existing ones, right? So, that's kind of the name of the game here, is reusing the data that we have in our system. Maintenance will struggle with the procurement of many unnecessary spare parts because they might not know if they have duplicate parts or similar parts in their inventory. Unnecessary parts are very expensive, right? When you have the same part over and over again, maybe by a different name, there's a whole lot of costs that go into that. It's difficult to determine just from looking at your pool of parts if you have similar parts or even duplicate parts within your system. So those things are very hard to find manually. And so is the manual classification of your parts. It's very complex, very hard to do, very time consuming. When we try to search for similar parts, a lot of times it's just easier for us to create a new design, right? So rather than looking through thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of parts even, it's very difficult to find something that you can reuse. So without countermeasures for all of this, the part count grows very rapidly within many companies. So the effects, of course, are there's an explosive proliferation of parts and assemblies in a lot of companies. The unnecessary production of similar or even identical parts, right? A lot of times, if we can find something that we've already created, we've already documented, we've already analyzed, we've already manufactured, it's certainly much easier to use that than try to recreate from scratch. So all this leads to rising costs in development, purchasing, production, warehousing, and maintenance. Uh, Typical companies have hundreds of thousands up to millions of parts with approximately 15% as unwanted duplicate parts. And there's some research firms that have estimated the average cost of a purchased part at about $1,950 US, and in-house manufactured part at about $3,690 US. So these things are very costly when we're recreating parts that we might already have in our system. So if you imagine just doing a manual classification of parts, there's so many different attributes that have to be classified manually, and that is very time consuming, very difficult, and error prone, to be honest. But with ModelSearch, those classifications are done automatically, right? So what makes it unique is the search engine to begin with. It's a very fast search engine looking for three-dimensional geometry. It's native to Creo in Windchill, so it sits right on top of your existing software. There's no third-party software needed. ModelSearch uses a geometric footprint for its searches, and this is native to Creo and fully integrated in Windchill. While we're working inside of Creo, ModelSearch Live does a proactive similarity search inside of our Windchill database. So we don't even need to look into Windchill when we're in Creo because ModelSearch Live will do that for us. And it's certainly an interactive search system where we're looking for geometric similarity, we're looking for parameters, we can look for hole patterns, and we can look for duplicates inside of Windchill. Some of the benefits are certainly there's a reduced time for design, there's reduced external production costs, reduced internal production costs, and reduced service costs. So we're really trying to reduce part proliferation and increase part reuse with this tool. So a little overview. Some of the highlights are it's fully integrated into your PTC products. Again, there's no additional software needed, and no neutral data export required. It's very easy to use. It's ready pretty much right after installation. It takes maybe a few days to install. The Windchill user structure is referred, so we have the same interface. What you'll see is there's just an added tab to your Windchill browser, and authorizations are reused from Windchill. This is very target driven, of course. It's a MultiCAD support for Windchill. So although it's native to Creo and Windchill, it will search for other CAD models inside of Windchill if you're storing them in Windchill, of course. This uses native files, and very little training required. It really takes about 4 hours of training to come up to speed. Because it's just so easy to use. So with the functionality, there's an automatic geometric footprint of our 3D models. And when we talk about the geometric footprint, there's 60 or more geometric attributes that are created with these footprints, and then that's what ModelSearch uses for its searches. It's interactive Similarity, geometric, and whole pattern search, all with inside of Creo, of course, and it's continuous. And what that means is as I create features in Creo, it's continuously searching the database. For each new feature that I create, it does another search. I can invoke a search automatically if I need to. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about what the search results look like when we get into the demonstration. If we're creating a duplicate model, that's detected, immediately. So there's by reusing models, of course, we're going to reduce the number of design operations and production operations that we're performing within our environment. We're going to reduce the part diversity, that the sheer number of parts that might be similar to each other. Very intuitive to use, and again, very, very little training time involved. So this really integrates into Windchill seamlessly. There's no software required. It basically sits right on top of your Windchill environment. It is supported for multi-CAD systems such as Catia, Siemens NX, SolidWorks, Autodesk, or Inventor. Right. So if those files are managed within your Windchill environment, ModelSearch will search for those files as well. There's no reason to do any neutral file transfer, so we don't lose any data. I don't know if you're familiar. Sometimes if you do a neutral transfer or export, step or IGES, sometimes you do lose some fidelity within the models. And with my experience, of course, over 40 years spinning various CAD products, I've seen a lot of issues with neutral file formats. And this is always kept up to date to the current PTC revisions. So MATE does have a partnership with PTC, and with that partnership, they're always constantly releasing their software with PTC's new releases. So in summary, very quickly, it's a native Windchill and Creo application. It uses a geometric footprint that's automatically created. This works for parts and assemblies, so I can compare parts to assemblies or assemblies to parts, or both, or vice versa, right? Very high level of search performance, although with my network, using Starlink might be a little bit slower, right? So really some very good advantages in using this tool. There's no change of Windchill object models or Windchill data. In Creo, it's continuous. It's a live search. And again, any duplicates would be detected during runtime, and supports multi-CAD environments. There's a few customer examples I'd like to share with you first. One company, MBO, they were able to identify 300 identical parts, right? So they no longer need to maintain those parts, which results in cost saving across the board. Really, if you think about it. Butcher airplane or aircraft products, where they make kind of the galleys that you see in your airplanes. They saw their return on their investment within 9 months of using the software. So very, very happy with the tool. And then another company, Bistronic, they were able to eliminate all their manual classification process. So the tool does this for them. So no longer needing to do any classification. So as far as references are concerned, as you can see on this slide here, there's quite a few companies that are using ModelSearch around the globe. Right here with TriStar in North America, we've had many customers already have implemented the software and are very happy with the tools. So with that, I'd like to go into our live demonstration, and let me just get my tools set up here. And there we go. First thing I'd like to do is start by modeling a simple bracket. We'll call it a base bracket. I'm working in metric, so this is my metric start part that I'm using. Just in case anybody asks or needs to know, when you install ModelSearch, you'll see there's a tab added to Creo that has the ModelSearch tools, right? We don't need to be in this tab for ModelSearch to work because it is live and interactive. It's continuously searching our Windchill database for any similar parts. We'll talk more about some of the menu options in a moment, but I'm just going to go ahead and start modeling. I'm going to model on my top datum plane. I'm going to create an extrusion. So it's going to be a simple rectangle that I'll make symmetric around my center datum planes. And then we'll just modify some dimensions here. And give it a depth. And finish that. Now, this immediately invokes a search into my Windchill database. And this takes a few seconds to come up. But what you can see down here in my lower left-hand corner, that it's saying there's no similar models to this plate here. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit why there's no results at this point. But right now, because there's no results, I'm going to go ahead and close my results window, and then I'm going to create another extrusion on the top of this model, or on the top of this panel here. And we'll make this be symmetric. And then I'll just mirror that to the other side. And then we'll add our dimension scheme. And then the moment I finish the feature, this invokes another search. And we'll see what kind of results we get at this point. And here, as you see over in my search results, we have 4 models found using a coarse weighting on the models. And what that means is we're looking for a limited number of geometric attributes. We can change that weighting if we like, and there's various levels of weighting that you might see. So when we look at a coarse weighting, Creo is looking for, or ModelSearch is looking for, just these attributes within the Windchill database. So it's kind of like a Google search. Fewer keywords gives you a better result, right? More keywords gives you less results, but more detail, right? And so we have several different levels of weighting that we can change within Creo or Windchill for that matter to look differently at the results. So coarse is the default, but we can set that to very coarse, or we can set that to stock finish. We can set that to a box. We can set that to fine, or we can set that to complex. And there's several different versions of weighting, and you can actually create your own weighting requirements if you need. But these are all the different examples of the weighting. Now, if we look at all the attributes, you can see here there's about 60 different attributes that is created as part of the geometric footprint, and that's what ModelSearch is comparing to. But since we're using the coarse finish, that's all that we're looking for. So if I were to change that here, right, and I go into my settings and I want to change that, I can change that to, for ModelSearch Live, I can change my quantifier to say all, and we could say okay. And then I can invoke a new search manually here, and let's see what results we get. Right. So as you can see, by looking for more attributes, my results are quite a bit different than what I would see with, say, a coarse weighting. So I like to use coarse in my live sessions so that I get my better results. Okay, as I model still, I can add additional features here, and every feature that I create and accept, it's going to invoke another search, right? And it's going to tell me in my search results how close of a percentage that we're seeing to this model that I'm creating. So there's a model here that's 90%, similar to the model I'm creating. There's another model here that's 87%. There's another model here that's 83%, and so on and so on. Now, if I take a look at the settings for this ModelSearch Live results, I can, change the size of the window. I can change the threshold, meaning, I don't want to look for anything in this case less than 60% similar, right? But I can change that if I want to look for, different levels of similarity, right? And then I can also, how many hits do I want in any row of my results? How many total hits? And I've got that set to 8. These are the defaults. I don't need to change them. How long does it take to provide the results, what that interval is? Now, again, I'm using SpaceX Starlink, so if I 3 seconds, it's not going to do 3 seconds for me, right? And then how long does it stay up on the screen, the results window? Unless I'm using it, it'll go away, right? So how do we manage the view, the attributes, our CAD tools, what happens in the window when we use our mouse button to open or show the model or compare it, or and so on, and I'll show you that in a moment. Any notifications that we have, and then using our cache. So these are all settings for the search results. When these results come on the screen, I can show the details of the model if I want, and that takes me into Windchill and just shows me that model inside of Windchill. I can also, get my CAD session back here. If I want to compare the model, I can do that. And what Creo does, or what ModelSearch does for me here, is it creates an assembly with an overlay of the two models, right? Now, it doesn't matter how these models were positioned in their own model. ModelSearch will assemble them accordingly. So if one is modeled from the front datum plane and another is modeled from the top datum plane, ModelSearch doesn't care. It just puts them together and matches all the surfaces so that they sit on top of each other. Now, in this assembly that was created for me, I have the part that I'm creating, right? And I can hide the other part. So that's the part that I'm working on. This is the part that I compared it to, right? And then as far as the results, I can see what the differences are in a positive, or I can see what the differences are in a negative. So very easy to see how similar these parts are. And at this point, I'd probably decide that I could reuse that part right there and maybe make a few changes to it and not have to go through all of the extra work creating documentation or analysis and so on. So very, very quickly, I'm able to see, hey, I've got something similar to what I'm creating. I might as well just use that. Okay, so let me close this window and we'll go back to the window we were working in, which was this bracket here. And let's talk about some of the other things within this menu here. First of all, I can compare inside of Windchill. We'll do that in a moment. I'm going to search right inside of Windchill from my Creo session. We'll talk about the raw part and the finished part later on in the demonstration. I can see the footprint, uh, which is kind of where my weighting comes from, of what the geometric attributes of this part are currently, right? So we can see number of surfaces, number of planes, and number of edges, number of vertices, and these are all geometric attributes that ModelSearch uses to establish a footprint, as well as looking for footprints with inside of Windchill for these different models. Okay. Um, I can see the bounding box of this, and that's one of the search attributes for ModelSearch. And then I can compare models. If I don't have a model result that comes up here, I can compare models from this model to another model if I know their names, of course. We'll talk about the whole pattern search in another part of the demonstration. And then as far as the settings are concerned, these are the different settings that we can change within Creo, right? So how does the Windchill environment work? And that's if I were to search in Windchill, what's the quantifier? Do I want to search for parts or assemblies, or for assemblies and parts when I'm creating a part? Or if I'm creating an assembly, do I want to search for assemblies or parts, or assemblies and parts? So we can set these independently for Windchill and for ModelSearch Live inside of Creo. We have some user interface settings, which is basically your units of measure, finished part search settings, and raw part search settings. So basically changing the attributes or the settings for the different search criteria, depending on what we're creating, whether it be a part or an assembly, or if we want to search our database for other, raw parts or finished parts and so on. These two icons here change my quantifier or my weighting. So if I just toggle through these, you can see that it's changing my quantifier. So I don't necessarily need to go to my settings for that, because I can do that just by toggling through using these icons, right? And I like to use course for this. And then same thing with Windchill. If I want to change that as well, I could do that here. And then these are the results filters. So if I'm working in an assembly, just like I did in the settings, I can say I want to change it to look for only assemblies, or look for only parts, or look for both. And the same thing is true with the parts. Do I want to look for matching parts, matching assemblies, or both? Okay. So very simple tools and settings to use, very intuitive. I can even open the model in a separate window if I wanted to, just bring that into Creo. Now, when I do that, that's going to, if it's not already in my workspace, it will load it into the workspace and then open that in a Creo window. I can also compare all the models in a single window if I wanted to do that. So all 4 of these models are now being loaded into my workspace and then being shown to me on my screen. So I can, very easily take a look at all these models and decide which one might be the closest one to what I want to use. Right. So again, very, very simple tools, very, very easy to work with. I can even import, say, a step model, right? If I wanted to import a model, I can do that, right? So if I say import, and I've got a model on my desktop, a step model, I can import that. I don't need a log file. And we'll just put that at the default location, and then we'll invoke a model search into our database to see if we have anything that is similar to this model. And there you can see we have, several different models that are, as much as 88% similar to the model that we're working with, right? So again, I don't need to create anything else for this. I could probably use one of these existing motor models within my database, right? So let's go into Windchill real quick. And in Windchill, let me close my results here. I'm going to search for a model here. So I'm just going to look for a model in this database. And let's say I work in manufacturing, right? And I've got this job. I've got to manufacture this part. And as I look at this, I say, well, maybe I have something like this that I've done before, right? So what I'll do here is I'm going to, in Windchill, search for a similar model, right? Or similar models, see if there's anything, because I remember, doing this once before. And here I can see a part that's very similar that is 96% the same, right? If I want to, I can take both of these models and view them in a gallery view, show them right next to each other. So I can kind of take a look at both of these models and see, why are they so similar? And if I look closely here, I can see that there are a number of ribs in this model that are different from the one that was already in my system. So, I can look at this and say, well, I've made this before. I can probably reuse the manufacturing routines to create this model. Maybe I have to manipulate them a little bit, but I don't have to create them from scratch in this example, right? So these models can be reused. All the production methodologies that were used to create the original part can probably be reused for the same part. All right, now back to Creo. I'm going to open up this assembly here, and within model search, not only can we search from part models, but we can also search from assembly models. And then as we do that, of course, we can search for parts and assemblies or isolate them to look for only assemblies or only parts. In this case, I want to maybe look to see if there's a different wheel for this robot assembly, right? So what I'll do is I'll activate that assembly within my top assembly, and I'm going to run model search right here and see if there's anything similar within my database. And here you can see there's several assemblies and even parts that fit the coarse geometric attributes, right? So there's quite a few parts here that are very similar, but maybe I'm just really looking at these assemblies, right? I can also search inside a Windchill for that. So I can just say, let me look inside a Windchill within my Creo application, and I can see the different parts and their weightings, very similar to the results that were presented to me. Of course, I get a few more hits in this case. Right. One of the things I can do is I can also analyze this assembly. And when I do that, that brings up all of the parts that are within this assembly. And then I can do from in here, I can say, well, I want to see if there's another wheel that might be similar, right? I'm going to reuse maybe the fastener. I'm going to reuse perhaps the tire that's part of this. But I'm going to go ahead and, do a similarity search on just that wheel model. And here we can see the different wheels that might fit that, geometric requirements, right? So this window here, maybe I'll take a look at both of these in a gallery view and see how close they are together, right? So I could probably, if I wanted to change out that wheel, I could do that right now. Okay, back to Windchill. This is Windchill, what's inside of Creo, right? I'm going to go back to my Windchill environment here, and I'm going to search for another model. This one is Z000161, whoops, excuse me, 16919. And with this bracket that I search for, I'm going to do a search for similar models. Okay, and there's quite a few models that are presented to me, and as you can see, all are very similar to the design. If we look at the model we were searching for, we have several that are very close to that model, right? So some of the things that we can do inside a Windchill, of course, is we can set the weighting just like we could in Creo. So if I want to say, well, let's look at the fine weighting and look for all these attributes and redo my search, you can see that the results are slightly different in some of the models that are presented to me. All right, I'm going to change that back to coarse just because that's what I like to use here. But let's look at some of the other things we can change. We can change the filter, right? What am I looking for? Parts or parts in assemblies or just assemblies, right? I can change that if I need to from here. I can change the units of measure. I'm using, in this case, I'm using metric, but I could change that to US or inches if I need to. I can change the search tolerance if I need to. I can also change the threshold, right? Maybe I want to look for parts that are 50% or better, or maybe 75%, right? And see, these are the parts that are 75% or better, matching to the part I was searching for, right? So we'll put this down to 50. I want a few more results. So anything that's 50% or better matching is presented to me here, right? We can change the display feature sets, right? If I look at that model, I can see what kind of features are in that model, right? So this says it has, a number of inside cylinders, a number of holes, and so on. So that's just giving me some, feature information about that model. I can export this list to Excel if I need to, and I can convert this to a parameter search. We'll do a parameter search in a moment, but that's, some of the settings that I can change within Windchill as well. Now, if I go look at, say a couple more parts in the gallery, I can do that as well. And this one's a family table, it looks like, but let's see what the gallery shows us here. So again, this, gives us a very easy place to review the different models that are part of that search, right, or the results, right? And here I can see that these are, all very similar part. One of them is 99% similar to the part that we were searching for. Another thing we can do within model search is I can search for parameters, and these would be whether they're geometric attributes or text attributes and so on. These are a number of things that we can search for. So we can look for numeric values, for a range or a comparison, feature combinations, text attributes, or hole patterns. In this case, I'm going to look for a number of holes. So I'm going to get rid of this attribute, and I'm going to say I want to look for a number of holes, and I'm going to say my number of holes is equal to 8, right? And I'm also going to say that I want to look at model size, or my bounding box, if you will, and I'm going to say my DM maximum, which is my bounding box, is going to be less than, and we'll say 50. So anything that fits within the bounding box of 50 centimeters and has 8 or more holes in it would show up in this search. So we'll do that and see what those results are. So here we have 7 objects that meet that criteria. 8 or more holes and are smaller than 50 centimeters inside the bounding box, right? So if I were to go back and edit the criteria, maybe I want to, go a little bit larger, right? So I'll say 70 here and enter and see if we get any more results. So as you can see, that increased the number of results. And again, we can take a look at any of these models and compare them, or search similar models as well. But these are all the models that met that search criteria, right? Which was, in this case, 8 holes and bounding box maximum dimension of 70 millimeters. Now we can actually save these searches for reuse later. So if we don't want to rewrite the criteria, we can save these and use them over and over again. And then they would show up in our saved searches, right? So we have a list of saved searches that are already here. We could, add that to the list of saved searches so that we don't, again, have to rewrite that criteria. One of the really nice tools is the duplicate search. So if I wanted to search for duplicates, I'm just going to invoke the duplicate search, and here you can see I have 2 duplicate groups, and I can expand those groups, and I can look through here. All of these models have a duplicate model within my database. So some of them are 2, some of them are more. Let's see if we can find one that has a few more here. In this group, no, but in our second group, we'll take a look. And here I have an example where I have 3 models that are identical. So from this search, I can actually show them down below. And then and that shows me those are all 3 duplicate matches. They're 100% duplicate, and then I can show them in a gallery as well to see them, right? And here you can see that they are, pretty much the same model, right? I can also go ahead and use a information on this, right, which brings up that model, and then I can search inside of my database for that model, and then invoke a similarity search here to see, not only the duplicate models, which we see here, we have 3 models that are 100% match, but also any other models that might be similar, right? And here our next model is 55%, probably not something that I would use for this. Another thing that we can do is inside of Creo is we can search for matching hole patterns, right? So I think this is, let me make sure I'm active in that model. Not that one. That one, right? So with this inside of my model search live, I can do a hole pattern search. And if I just pick on one of these hole patterns and invoke the search, whoops, I can see that there are parts that have matching hole patterns. So if I need to find, some, mating part that matches the hole patterns, I can do that very quickly as well. So another neat tool within ModelSearch. And another thing I can do as well is I can actually look for, let's say, a raw part, meaning I have this model here and I want to see if there's anything in my database that I can manufacture this part from. So I'm just going to do a raw part search, and this actually looks into my database, sees if there's any parts that fit that criteria, and then presents those to me in an assembly, right? Just like compare part, I can see that this is the part that I can manufacture from. So if I open that, you can see it's very similar to this part here. So that's telling me that I can use that to machine it down and make this part. If I have, something like this, I can do the same search here where I'm looking for a raw part. And in this case, there's going to be a few more results, right? So it's looking for all the parts that I might be able to manufacture from to make this new part. So there you can see we have basically 5 different assemblies that we can compare and see, the that we can model this part from. So if I just hide everything else here, you can see that, the one part fits within the other pretty good. So I know that I can manufacture that part from the part that is being presented to me. So, that's kind of nice if we have an extra inventory of parts that we're not going to use. We know that we can take those parts and machine them down to make a new part. So that's another benefit of having a tool like this. So with that, that's all that I wanted to show you. I want to open up for questions at this point, if there are any questions. And Nick, I don't know if you have access to the questions
Uh,
from
yep,
users.
yes, I do. I do not see any yet, so yeah, we'll just take a few moments and wait for those to come in, and then we'll take this time. We'll encourage you to share the recording once you guys get it. It'll probably take about 20, 30 minutes or so to upload, and then you'll get a link to everyone who attended. Will get a link to go ahead and download it or view it, and then, like I said, we'll also have it on tristar.com and our YouTube page. And it looks like someone raised their hand. Let's see, Philip Childers, did you have a question? If you want to go ahead and type it in chat. And everybody should also have a little question button. They could submit a question as well. Give it a few more moments here. Oh, yeah. All right. It looks like, yeah. How long does it take to train the Windchill database to get the machine learning model being used for these searches?
So when you install ModelSearch in your Windchill environment, we do have to create the footprints, the index the models, if you will. And depending on how many um, worker you have in your Creo, in your Windchill environment, it will determine how many or how fast it will create the footprints. So on average, it's 300 to 400 footprints per hour per CAD worker, right? So if you had, let's say, 4,000 models in your system, with one CAD worker might take up to 10 hours to generate the footprint, if that answers your question.
We got a couple more. It says, what is the greatest number of simultaneous Creo users within the current installations?
So, in the U.S., we have customers with as many as 100 users using model search simultaneously. So, uh, because the database of attributes is really just metadata, it's not a big database, right? It's just the footprint information, and so it's very quick, and it really is not hindered by the number of users.
Tom also asks, what is the licensing model?
I guess I'm not sure about that. I mean, there's you know bundled licenses depending on how many users you have. They are named licenses, so there are also floating licenses that are available. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but
Yeah, that sounds about right. We have another question from Vito. Vito asks, how much disk space does it use? Does this application use?
negligible, because again, it's just a footprint database basically of metadata. The tools, are very small in size in comparison. I mean, if you think about a Creo uh, software, seat of Creo, that takes about 6 or 7, maybe even 8 gigabytes on your machine. I haven't seen any increase in the size of my Creo installation.
And Vito asked another question. Do you have any DOE customers?
Um, in the U.S., I mean, since they're DOE, I don't know if I can tell you, but yes, we do. Yes, we do. So,
Well, alrighty then. I think that seems to be it for questions. So yeah, thank you, Sean, very much, and everyone who took their time today to come and listen to this webinar. You'll find again this replay on our YouTube channel and our tristar.com here soon. You'll also will get sent a copy. And you can also find additional webinar replays and more information, including some free trial links at our website as well. And we also have a Model Search product page where we have some product briefs and information and pamphlets if you would like to learn more about Model Search. So thanks, everybody, and appreciate your time.
thank you, everybody.